Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all are doing well today. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Evangelyn Gargar, the first reporter of Group 5. As you can see on your screen, it can be seen that our topic is all about global migration. So before we proceed to the discussion, let us first know the topic's learning outcomes. At the end of this lesson, we should be able to identify the reasons for the migration of people, explain why states regulate migration, and the last is discuss the effects of global migration on the economic well-being of states. In this lesson, we have to identify kung unsa jining global migration, kung unsa ay ang mga impacts towards the sending and the receiving countries. If we want to know its impacts, we also have to recognize the challenges which are relevant to migration. But we have to note that migration should not be seen and considered as a problem. For in fact, there is nothing wrong about moving from one place to another or from one country to another. Human beings have always been migratory and part na sad ni siya sa human behavior. Pero, dili ni nato siya matawag na it belongs to a natural behavior sa usa ka tawo. Kay this is just only a response made by a human when it comes to experiencing adversity or violence in that specific area. So kung ginahan sila na they will be free from any misfortunes happening in that area, ang kailangan nilang buhaton is migrate. They have to migrate to another location which is free from any of those difficulties. And as a result of their movement, it affects the population of the area, communities experience diversity, and economies prosper. Migration is neither good nor bad, but surely it is a complex social phenomenon that even predates contemporary globalization. So, unsa may pasabot ana? Anak ko no nga, ang migration is dili pwede ma-mark as good or bad. But, migration is considered as a complex social phenomenon for the reasons na, di ba, each regions and countries has their own ways of living. They have different cultures and traditions. So, when you transfer, mag-adjust jud ka. You have to apply or you have to blend kung unsa ilang cultural behavioral norms para di sad nila ma-misunderstand, ma-misinterpret, or para di sad sila ma-offend sa imong mga actions. And also, di sad malikayan ang discrimination, racism, lain-lain na political views, and religious belief. In addition, migration exists even before the existence of contemporary globalization. So, mas nauna og exist ang migration kay it began pa pag mga pre-modern history. Mao ni ang time sa mga Homo erectus. Well, ang sa contemporary globalization, nag-start ni siya around the middle of 19th century. Okay, so moving on, what is migration? Migration is the temporary or permanent movement of people from one place to another. Migration can be both applicable to human and as well as to the animals. But in this lesson, we will only be talking about human migration. So in migration, people can either choose to move, which we call it as voluntary migration, or be forced to move, which we call it as an involuntary migration. Each person who transfers from one place to another has their own personal reason kung ano sila migrate. It could be for security purposes, economic reason, or to look for better opportunities. Either of which reason could it be, migration will surely provide an impact or effects to both sending and receiving countries. Okay, so there are two types of migration, one of which is the internal migration, which it refers to people moving from one area to another within one country. And the other one is the international migration, which refers to people who cross borders of one country to another. Interregional migration and intra-regional migration are the two main types of internal migration, wherein interregional migration is about moving from one region of a country to a different region in the same country. Interregional migration occurs because people are moving from rural to urban areas, wherein this is the movement of people from rural areas to cities. Ang push factor nga no ang usa ka tawo from rural area mo transfer adto sa city or sa urban area, it could be na they had seen fewer opportunities out there. Kamay ang sweldo, or they are seeking something sa city na wala nila nakita sa ilang area. For example, a person from Mindanao, somewhere in Pagadian, decided na muadto siya sa Luzon in Manila City in search for job opportunities, since makita man jud ang dako na kalahian on both regions, and also it has big difference jud when it comes to minimum wages. Then ang sa intra-regional migration, it is the movement of people within the same region. Urbanization, suburbanization, and counter-urbanization are the concepts that embody intra-regional migration. So urbanization, it is the movement from a rural area to a more developed location. Okay, reason on why people move from rural areas to urban areas, it is because rural-urban migrants seek economic opportunities. For example, as sahod, it provides high-quality education and easy access to healthcare facilities or services. Sa suburbanization, it is the migration from urban cities to the areas around them called suburbs. Pull factors to the suburbs include better life, better opportunity, safer areas, and more space. And the last concept which embody the intra-regional migration is the counter-urbanization. So, ang counter-urbanization, it is the kabaliktaran sa urbanization. If ang urbanization is from rural to a more developed area, ang counter-urbanization, mauni siya ang movement of people from urban areas to a rural areas for various reasons. So, with advanced communications, rural areas are not as isolated as they used to be. Okay, allowing for the alleviation of some of the push factors of rural life, such as isolation. So, rural areas, kuno kadili na siya parehas pag sa una nga super isolated. But with the help of the technologies, with the advanced communications it reduced the isolation of rural areas. Okay, moving on to the second type of migration, which is the international migration. In international migration, mauni ang mga tao na ni-cross in national borders to reach their destination country. For example, from Philippines to Canada. International migration is divided into 5 groups. Okay, international migration is divided into 5 groups. Namely, immigrants, temporary immigrants, or those workers who stay in other country for fixed period, illegal migrants, okay, migrants whose family have petitioned, and the last one is refugees. So let us first tackle what is immigrants. Okay, immigrants, this refers to someone who moves to a new country to take up permanent residence. Mao ni sila ang mga tao na coming from a different country na ningbalhin adto sa lain na country to stay in that certain country permanently. Example, ako, my birth of origin is sa Philippines. However, naka-decide ko na muad to migrate pa daw sa Canada for economic reasons. Okay, in order for me to become a permanent resident in that country, I have to get all the necessary requirements for me to be able to permanently reside and become a citizen of that country. The second one is the workers who stay in another country for fixed period. Okay, this is also called as temporary immigrants. So these are the workers who stay in another country for fixed period. Ang example ani is katong mga OFW. since ilang trabaho is contractual man, so they have to stay in the country for a fixed period until ma-end ng ilahang contract. That ends my report. Now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ramirez so that she can elaborate more about the global migration. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ramirez, and I will continue the discussion in the topic global migration and different types of migrants. Illegal migrants. Illegal migrants are a foreign person who is living in a country without having official permission to live there. The main three types of illegal migrants are those that enter the country legally but only for a certain amount of time or temporary na ilang pagstay. For example, OFWs with work visas. Once their contracts expire, they are expected to return back to their country. Pero, some OFWs chose to remain in that country without filing for the proper papers or informing their agency or the embassy of their plans to remain in the country. Naadyo uban mga OFW na di legally overstayed their welcome. Kay dili sila ganahan mo balik silang lugar tungod baron kay mas daghan og opportunity sa foreign country or other reasons. Another type is illegal migrants na from the very first start na enter sila sa country without any sort of registration sa government. For example, people from South America would illegally enter North America through human smuggling. These migrants choose to enter the country illegally in a way na ismagol sila pasulod. An example of this is human smuggling through shipment containers. What happens is, this one is ang mga tao pasudlon sila og shipping containers, adto sila marag mga sardinas, maghuot. And ang katong shipment container is i-deliver sa North America under the pretense na mga food products na to. And sometimes, dili man jud kayo sila higpit mo check sa mga shipments, and naasad na sila konsabo sa taga North America, so matabangan na sila og pasulod. Once they enter America, illegal immigrants na sila kay wala sila nagpa-register sa government na ma-enter sila sa country para ma-citizen. Another type of illegal immigrants are people who have been kidnapped or tricked into slavery to work as laborers after entering the country, for example, in factories. This is a case of human trafficking. Those trafficked in this manner often face additional barriers to escaping slavery, since their status as undocumented immigrants makes it difficult for them to gain access to help or services. The next is migrants whose family has petitioned for them, also known as chain migration. Its name is pretty self-explanatory na jud. These people already had relatives and connections sa other countries, so their family will ask for a petition to let their family enter the country and be a citizen. The next is refugees, also known as asylum seekers, i.e. those unable or unwilling to return because of well-founded fear of persecution on account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group or opinion. War and religious violence are leading causes of refugees fleeing their countries. When people flee their own country and seek sanctuary in another country, they apply for asylum. The right to be recognized as a refugee and receive legal protection and material assistance. An asylum seeker must demonstrate that his or her fear or persecution in his or her home country is well-founded in order for the request for assistance to be valid. A more current example of asylum seekers are the people in Ukraine. As we all know, Russia invaded Ukraine and has waged war against their country. A lot of people had to flee from their homes and seek refuge to another countries for their safety of their lives. Demographers estimates that 247 million people are currently living outside the countries of their birth. 90% of them move for economic reasons, while the remaining 10% were refugees and asylum seekers. The top three regions of origin are Latin America, which consists of 18% of global total, followed by Eastern Europe and Central Asia, which consists of 16%, and Middle East and North Africa, which consists of 14%. On a per-country basis, India, Mexico, and China are leading, with the Philippines together with Afghanistan only ranking 6th in the world. The top 10 country destinations of these migrants are mainly in the West and Middle East, with the United States topping the list. Notice how most of the regions and countries listed here are either third world countries or countries that are war. And also, the countries that the people are seeking refuge to are from first world countries. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Are immigrants assets or liabilities? There are rising issues about migration and immigrants as there have been an increase in number of migration. A lot of anti-immigrant groups and nationalists are raising this issue to their government to control legal migration and put a stop to illegal migration. Their reasoning for this is that they think that immigrants are slowly ruining their country. But, according to a 2019 paper from Tel Aviv University, they have identified that economic competition, cultural competition, racial attitudes, and fear of crimes as some of the most significant factors in opposition to migration. Many of these anti-immigrant groups are gaining influence through political leaders who share their beliefs. Example includes US President Donald Trump and UK Prime Minister Theresa May, who have been reversing the existing pro-immigration and refugee-sympathetic policies of their states. Most recently, Trump attempted to ban travel in the United States of people from majority Muslim countries, even those with proper documentation. He also continues to speak about his election promise of building a wall between United States and Mexico. Some citizens in the host country believe that immigrants bring nothing to their country. They believe that immigrants give little to nothing in terms of contribution to their country. To check if their conclusions are true, here are some advantages and disadvantages to the host country. Let's start with advantages. First is a richer and more diverse culture. Immigrants, when migrating to another country, will always bring and share a little bit of their culture. They cannot just abandon their nationality and history. Sharing one's culture to another is an advantage as it opens you up to new discoveries. For example, daghan og mga Chinese na migrate sa Philippines sa una para magtukod og business. And as they've migrated here in our country, they also shared their culture. Nakadiscover tag new cuisines, innovations, and naka-adapt sila sa uban nilang cultures like giving money on red envelopes during New Year, mag-prepare og mga lingin-lingin na fruits ika New Year para good luck, and feng shui. Next advantage is, it helps reduce any labor shortages. This is one of the biggest advantages sa host country and one of the biggest disadvantages sa origin country. Because skilled workers are migrating to other countries in pursuit of more opportunities, like sa mga domestic helpers, construction workers, nurses, medtechs, teachers, and many more. They choose to migrate to another country as they pay more than the origin country. Dili jud mabagtangan og workers ang mga host countries kay daghan og mga tawo mobalhin sa ilang country para lang mo trabaho. And sometimes pagani, musugot ra ang mga trabahador na gamay ra ilang sweldo. Kay kung sa host country, gamay ra na ang kantidad, kung ang ilang dollars i-exchange sa origin country na money, dako naman na maong daghan jud kaayong mag-OFW. 50% of global migrants have moved from developing countries to the developed zones of the world and contribute anywhere from 40 to 80% of their labor force. Their growth has outstripped the population growth in the development of countries, 3% versus only 0.6%. According to the think tank McKinsey Global Institute, first-generation immigrants constitute 13% of the population in Western Europe, 15% in America, and 48% in the GCC countries. The majority of migrants remain in the cities. The percentage of migrants in cities are 92% in the United States, 95% in the United Kingdom, and 99% in Australia. Once settled, they contribute enormously to raising the productivity of their host countries. The next advantage is migrants are prepared to take on low-paid, low-skilled jobs. A lot of our OFWs work non-blue-collar jobs. Mostly, ang ilang mga trabaho kay kargador, yaya, maid, janitor, garbage man, and construction worker. But these types of jobs are the realities of OFWs. Low-skilled rani na mga jobs, ang gamay ra sad og pay. Pero kung ang $8 per hour, gamay ra na para sa ilaha, kung i-convert sa tuang money, maabot na siya og 400 pesos taga oras. If atong i-assume na ang trabaho dito is maabot jud og 8 hours sa usa ka adlaw, sa usa ka adlaw nakakwarta na sila og 3,200 pesos. Mas dako pa kaysa sa atuang 537 pesos na minimum wage per day. That's a very big difference, and even though low-skilled na sila, no work, grabe sad kayo kahago ang ilang labor. So swerte na ang host country na naay mga tao na musugot gihapon mo trabaho sa hago kayo na trabaho for a measly minimum wage. Now let's look at the disadvantages. First is increasing cost of services such as healthcare and education. Second disadvantage is overcrowding. The third disadvantage is disagreement between different religion and culture. These are the main disadvantages of migration. But migration is not even the main reason for the increase of healthcare and education in their country. It barely takes 1/4 of the blame, as it depends on the government and economy. And it is proven that migration helps the host country's economy grow. Overcrowding is indeed a problem that is hard to solve. Maybe promotion of family planning can help a little, but not always. And next is the disagreement between different religions and cultures. It is not really that big of a problem. This is only a disadvantage because some citizens in the host countries show heavy race discrimination to immigrants. Mas daghan pa ganitag mabalitaan na ang mga immigrants kay gi-abuse ang gilait sa mga citizens sa host countries kaysa sa mga immigrants na nagninal dito og naghinawd o nag-cause trouble sa host countries. Evidence suggests that international migration can boost aggregate income or GDP growth in high-income host countries over the long term. One of the channels for growth is by expanding the labor force and higher wages, and as international migration can boost capital accumulation for migrants and natives. Another channel is that migrants increase the employment to population ratio in host countries, which is particularly important for countries with aging populations like Japan. Furthermore, migrants boost capital accumulation and employment through higher foreign investments, international trade, and entrepreneurship. Finally, international migrants have a positive effect on the aggregate income in high-income countries as they foster labor productivity, boost innovation, and complementaries with native workers by increasing diversity in productive skills, leading to economic growth. The claims that migration is a big issue and that the government must address this issue and that the allegations that migrants are affecting and ruining their country are consistently discredited by statistical data. For example, a 2011 Harvard Business School survey on the impacts of migration concluded that likelihood and magnitude of adverse labor markets effects for native immigrations are substantially weaker than often perceived. The fiscal impact of immigration on social welfare was noted to be very small. Furthermore, the 2013 report on the government welfare spending by Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or also known as OECD, clearly shows that native-born citizens still receive higher support compared to immigrants. The host countries benefits more on migration. Migration contributes a lot of things to their country and economy. However, can the same thing be said to the origin country? Dako usad ba kaya og benepisyo ang origin country compared sa host country? Here are the advantages and disadvantages of the origin country. The advantages of the origin country are, first, money sent home by migrants. This means the remittance money na masay makuha ang government na say contribution sa atong economy. Second is decreased pressure on jobs and resources. With many people leaving the country to work to another country, mas nanaghan gamay ang mga work opportunities. Third is migrants may return with new skills. Migrants learn new things from foreign countries, and these new knowledge and skills can be applied to the origin country para makatabang o pag-grow and develop sa origin country. That is, if ganahan pa ba sila mo balik sa ilahang origin country. The disadvantages are, first, people of working age move out, reducing the size of country's potential workforce. Second is, gender imbalances are caused as it is typically men who seek to find employment elsewhere. Mas ang mga lalaki pa biya ang motrabaho dyan sa OFW kasi it is in their mindset na sila ang breadwinner, so dapat sila ang mabuhi silang mga family. This leads to women and children being left alone. So, the more na ang mga lalaki mularga sa gawas para matrabaho, the more na ang mga babae ra ug mga anak ang mabilin sa country. Mao na sa disadvantages. The advantages and disadvantages will be extensively discussed by my other groupmates. But here's what I have concluded so far. Migration is an asset to the host countries because their GDPs raise. Daghan sad og mga skilled workers mobalhin sa ilang country, and bonus is gamay ra ang sweldo na ilahang ibayad. Immigrants also tend to be not picky on the jobs offered to them as they are more prepared to take on low-paid, low-skilled jobs. For example, domestic helpers, janitors, garbage men, etc. These jobs would be considered a degrading job kay dihimo ra kag yaya and basurero. But because compared to the salary rate in the origin country, mas dako man jud og hatag ang host country compared sa Philippines. Kung sa Philippines, ang monthly rate sa yaya kay 5K every month, libre na food and shelter. Sa Hong Kong, kay ang ilang monthly salary sa mga domestic helpers is 4,630 Hong Kong dollars per month, which is approximately 30,791.05 pesos. 6 times more higher than the local's monthly salary. Pero sa Hong Kong, ang salary na 4,630 Hong Kong dollars is based na siya sa minimum wage. Mao na ilahang minimum wage. While sa Pinas, barely minimum ang mga sweldo sa mga yaya. So the host country is getting a pretty good deal from immigrants. Although there is an issue in overcrowding and increasing cost of services such as healthcare and education, it still offsets the fact na mas makabenefit jud ang mga host countries sa migration. Which brings me to my next point, which is migration is liability to the origin country for the reason that people of working age move out, reducing the size of the country's potential workers. Imbis ang mga skilled workers kay magamit sa countries para magsaka ang economy, these skilled workers are leaving their country to find better opportunities. Ang result ani is gamay na lang ang mga skilled workers sa origin country, which will lead to less economic growth and an increase in poverty. Yes, makabenefit ta sa mga remittance money nila, but the origin country is not getting better. Imbis managhan atong mga skilled workers, manggamay ra hinuon. Ano saan man ang remittance benefits kung gamay ra ang foundation na makatpatabang o pasaka sa atong ekonomiya. Notice how country most frequented by immigrants mas daghan success and growth nakita compared sa origin country. With present economic and trading structures, it is the rich and powerful countries that benefits the most. That is all for my reporting. Thank you. To talk more about the benefits and detriments of migration is the next reporter, Miss Angel Fabular.
Detriments for the sending countries. So the detriments for the sending countries are the loss of talented workers, and there's no significant influence on investment on education and healthcare. So dili ra jud siya benefits imong makuha ani kay di jud siya ingon nga makatabang jud siya sa country like sa education or healthcare sa bansa, but makatabang siya sa household para makahawa sa poverty. And ang global migration kay it exhausts countries' qualified workers, young workers, which is called brain drain. And 'di ba sa kasagaran ron kay ang goal kay mularga sa gawas kay adto manarbaho imbes na ganahan ta nga diri ra ta manarbaho kay para dausad sa pamilya nya makatabang sa ta sa atong own country kay di na lang kay ang atong gi hunahuna kay ang kung unsaon nato paghawa sa kalisod. So moadto jud tas lain nasod kay dako magsweldo nya dollars man nya abot ra ba diri kay dako ra ba rate ang dollars nya daghan ra bag mga doctors labi nag nurses nga adto mo trabaho sa gawas, so lost jud na siya sa sending countries nya daghan na pa jud ning migrate sa laing lugar kasagaran kay sa Canada jud nya ang governments kay aware ani nga matter, but sige gapon siya kay nya di gapon mahunong tungod sa impact ani sa remittances adto sa GDP. So ang katong sa akong nga brain drain ganina kay it is the migration of educated or professional people in search of the better standard of living and quality of life, higher salaries, access to advanced technology, and more stable political conditions in different places worldwide. So kato siya kanang mamalhin sila og kanang mga professionals or kanang mga workers kay mo balhin sila og lain nga country for katong paraani kanang better quality of life, higher salaries nya ang ato abi ang gikuan jud ron kay ang higher salaries kay tungod sa kalisod. So man siya ang kanang governments are involved in recruitment and employment of workers nya ang sustainability sa mga migrant dependent economies will partially depend on the institutions such as the Bureau of Manpower, Employment and Training in Bangladesh, Office of the Protector of Immigrants within the Indian Labor Ministry, and ang pinakanon nga agency which is the Philippine Overseas Employment Agency or POEA. That's it for my report.
So, good afternoon everyone. I'm Airian Mae Pableo, the next reporter. I will be tackling about the benefits for the sending countries. So, now is an age of globalization, man, diba? So, the parochialism of the nation-state is giving way to the global village. At the same time, never before have borders been so heavily policed, walls keeping prospective citizens out so high, comes for detaining the transient so large. Yet, for all these barriers to entry and hazards to navigate, the number of migrants globally continues to grow. Next is, does immigration has a positive effect on the sending country? The answer is yes. Because by decreasing the labor pool in the sending country, ang immigration makatabang para ma-reduce ang unemployment. and also makahelp po siya pag-increase sa incomes of the remaining workers. And one element of immigration that is seen to benefit the sending country is the payment of remittances. So, unsa man ang payment of remittances? Ang payment of remittances, mauna siya ang kwarta nga i-transfer to another party. Broadly speaking, any payment na siya of an invoice or a bill nga matawag og remittance. However, the term is most often used nowadays to describe a sum of money sent by someone nga nagtrabaho abroad to his or her family back home. So, man siya for sender countries, one of the main benefits of global migration is remittance payments from the departed. So, migrants that have secured a job abroad often send parts of their wages to their families nga naghihapon reside sa ilang home country. So, the large transfers of money from the more prosperous developed world to the poor developing are often seen as key to the latter's economic development. So, as remittance payments are a private flow that is far more significant in size, scale, and impact than state-to-state development aid. There are private flows that put decisions to consume, invest, etc. in the hands of migrants and sa ilang mga pamilya. So, like sa Philippine-based newspaper, The Inquirer siya, ang ilang report in 2013 nga, ang remittance payments sent home by overseas Filipinos kay ni-reach og about $2 billion per month. So, oiling the country's robust consumer spending. And also sa Nigeria po, remittance payments are said to contribute up to 5% of GDP. Likewise, remittance payments can also be used as collateral for migrants to purchase houses in the sender country. So, ang kaning idea is to develop legal and financial procedures nga nagpermit sa migrants nga makapalit or patukod og balay para sa ilang pamilya nga naa baron sa Pilipinas without having sa mga migrants to return to their country of origin. So the remittances are used to pay off the loan while the house serves as loan collateral. And next is unlocking funds. Beyond cash transfers for consumer spending as economically stimulating as they may or may not be, remittance payments also have the potential to unlock much-needed funds for developing countries. So, kaning funds kay pwede magamit to promote more comprehensive development initiatives. Global migration from the developing to the developed world also opens up other potential tools for economic development. So, ang migrants in destination countries saving their money are likely to use a deposit account. So, accruing little interest, this presents a financial opportunity for sender countries through offering bonds to diaspora populations to raise funds for development. So, some countries have had success with diaspora bonds. So, unsa maning diaspora bonds, mao ni siya ang government debt security with investor drawn from the country's nationals living abroad. So, diba, ubang countries have had success with diaspora bonds such as India and Israel, with the former using it to support balance of payments and the latter to fund education o mga infrastructure projects. So, ang migration i-offer ani nga opportunity for developing countries to carry this out. And next is whether or not migration brings a net income economic benefit to the sender countries is hard to determine. So, migration offers many benefits to sender countries through the transfer of funds from those abroad through remittance. However, the danger is that this becomes a substitute for economic development, with the sender countries reliant upon cash transfers but without any real economic foundation to build upon. But ideas such as diaspora bonds or using the future flow of remittance payments to secure debt may help cash-strapped sending countries with much-needed funds, which, if used correctly, such as to build infrastructure, could stimulate economic development. So that's all for my report. Next reporter, please.
Hi everyone, I am Miriam, Parba, and my topic is all about human trafficking. Human trafficking, also known as trafficking in persons or modern-day slavery, is a crime that involves compelling or coercing a person to provide labor or services, or to engage in commercial sex acts. So there is no single profile of a trafficking victim. So victims of human trafficking can be anyone, regardless of race, color, national, religion, age, gender, sexual orientation, or education level, or citizenship status. So although there is no single trait that all human trafficking victims share, traffickers usually prey on people who are impoverished, living in an unsafe environment, or looking for a better life. So false promises of love, a decent job, are used to lure or force victims into circumstances where they are compelled to work in horrific conditions for little or no money. Human trafficking is one of the fastest growing industries in the world, even as people become more aware of the problem. What fuels the growth of modern slavery? Who is the most vulnerable? And where is it happening? Here are some facts about human trafficking. First is human trafficking has a variety of causes. While many people believe that poverty is the driving force behind human trafficking, there are many other elements at play: education, government corruption, political instability, and a lack of human rights protections are all factors that contribute. So human trafficking is caused by a complex network of interconnected factors. Second is women and girls are most often exploited for sex work. So according to 2016 ILO stats, 99% of trafficking victims are women and girls. So the vast majority of trafficked women and girls are found in Asia and the Pacific, over 70%, while Europe has 14% and the Americas have 4%. Third is both men and women are traffickers. In terms of who is trafficking people, both men and women are responsible. In fact, according to the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, in 30% of the countries that gave out gender information on traffickers, more women were actually responsible. With sex trafficking, women who themselves have been trafficked often end up continuing the cycle of trafficking, manipulating the trust of other victims. Lastly, major companies benefit from child labor. So a handful of big corporations depend on suppliers that use child labor. Despite many promises to address the problem, life has been done. These corporations include Nestle, Hershey's, and Nike. So the Philippines is currently ranked as a Tier 1 country by the U.S. Department of State, meaning that it fully meets the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking. So this status recognizes the huge and ongoing progress made in the fight against human trafficking in the Philippines. So however, as the figures show, it remains a significant problem. So demographics of human trafficking in the Philippines. Men, women, and children are exploited from rural communities, conflict and disaster zones, and impoverished urban areas. Perpetrators. Human trafficking frequently involves native Filipinos in the recruitment stage. Smuggling networks and subsequent trafficking are overseen by organized crime gangs in the Philippines. Types of human trafficking in the Philippines. According to the United States, the Philippines, according to the U.S. Department of State, is a major source of both sex and labor trafficking. Male Filipino migrant laborers are often exploited in the fishing, shipping, construction, manufacturing, and agricultural sectors, while female migrant workers are typically exploited in domestic and hospitality professions. Sex and labor trafficking affects children of both genders, with many being sold by family members. Recruitment methods of human trafficking in the Philippines. So victims are frequently recruited to work as entertainers, but they are instead compelled to work as strippers, nightclub hostesses, and prostitutes. So Filipino domestic employees were illegally recruited to work in the United Arab Emirates in January 2021, but were instead coerced into domestic work in Damascus. Next is human trafficking and COVID-19. Traffickers in the Philippines have learned to use the internet as a tool of recruitment and abuse. Undeterred by the COVID-19 pandemic, according to the 2021 Trafficking in Person report, there was a 265% increase in unverified claims of online child sexual exploitation in the Philippines during the pandemic. So children are sexually exploited by traffickers in live internet broadcasts, which their customers watch from afar and pay for using wire transfers. So parents or close relatives are frequently the traffickers who force their children to engage in online sexual exploitation. Last is non-profit organizations fighting human trafficking in the Philippines. So the Philippine government is working with non-governmental organizations to identify areas where better structures and funding are most needed. So through livelihood and skills training programs, organizations like Renew Foundation and Made in Hope are empowering survivors of human trafficking in the Philippines. So anti-trafficking education is provided by organizations such as Together in Hope to help prevent human trafficking. And that's all for my report. Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ledenille Omandac, the next reporter. So I will tackle about the integration. So integration is a delicate or critical transition of the migrant. So it is from your country to another country. So from the outsiders to the insider. So the process by which the migrants became a part of their new community. So successful integration is hard to measure because it is a multi-layer. So touching from every part of the migrant experience, from education to housing, political participation, and civic engagement. We might not able to capture it well, but few doubt it is more important. So while many migration issue became hotly contested, integration is widely considered to be good thing for migrants and for the society they have moved into. So there is, of course, considerable variation in the economic integration of migrants. So migrants from China, India, and Western Europe often have more success because this is known as a developing country. So while those from Middle East, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa face greater challenges in securing jobs. So in the United States and Singapore, there are blue-collar as well as white-collar Filipino workers, which are the doctors, engineers, even corporate and executives. And it is the professional white-collar workers that have often been easier to integrate because this is known as a skillful profession. So ang position are often expected to offer opportunities to advance to more significant roles. So democratic states, however, without a solid support from their citizens, switching citizenship may just be a formality. So linguistic difficulties, custom from the old country, and of late differing religion may create cleavages between migrants and citizens of receiving countries, particularly. So integration, it is about the process of settlement of newcomers in a given society. So to the interaction of newcomers with the host society and to the social changes that follows immigration. So from the moment the immigrants arrive in a host society, they must secure a place for themselves. Literally, they must find a home, a job, and income. Like for children, schools for their children, and access to the health facilities. They must find a place in a social and cultural sense as well, as they have to establish cooperation and interaction with other individuals and groups in the society. They also have to get to know and use institution of the host society or the particular society, and the latter have to recognize and accept immigrants as political, economic, and cultural.
Hello everyone, I am Charlene, Sable, and I am the next reporter. As we all know, after migration, there will be a problem in integration. With all of these problems, this will result to migrants unwittingly reinforce the tension by keeping among themselves. With the lack of integration, migrants without knowingly may tend to just stick with their own and not fully exploring the country that they migrate with, since integration is the process by which migrants become a part of their new community. Migration without integration is difficult. That is why the first time migrants have anxiety at coming into a new and strange place. As we all know, migration is difficult. It is hard with the migrants to cope up and adapt with a new culture, customs, and languages and so on. Although with the difficulties and the anxiety that they felt, they also have local networks of fellow citizens that serve as the migrant safety net from the dislocation of uprooting oneself. Migrants' local networks will help them to reduce their worry by helping them. For example, the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association provides support for new Chinese migrants. So mugani sila sa new migrant in finding work or putting up businesses sa usa ka country. However, there's also a downside of this network because instead of facilitating integration, it exacerbates differences and discrimination. Why? Because integration is all about a critical transition of the migrant from outsider to insider. This means that a migrant should also interact and cope up and adapt new things, not just by keeping among themselves and with their local networks. So, with this, governments and private businesses made policy changes to address integration problems. The first one is using of multiple languages in state documents. So it is in the case of the United States, Spanish and English. This will help the migrants to fully understand any things that needed to be considered in migrating a country. On the other hand, migrants should also do its part by learning the languages that they migrate with. The second one is that they provide training programs complemented with counseling in Hamburg, Germany, and while retail merchants in Barcelona have brought in migrant shopkeepers to break down language barriers while introducing Chinese culture to citizens. Whether this initiative will succeed or not, it remains an open question. Sa kadaghan nga issues that has not been solved, integration is widely considered to be a good thing for migrants and for the societies they have moved into. Although integration is difficult to achieve, a country should promote stability, education, and opportunity to have a proper and right integration. That's all. Thank you.
Good day everyone, my name is Xyryn Quinanola. I will talk about conclusion of global migration. Global migration entails the globalization of people and a broader globalization process that is uneven. Some migrants experience their movement as liberating process. Most highly educated professionals were searching a country that has a high financial rewarding. Aside from positive, global migration had a lot of issues like human trafficking, sex trafficking, lost high educated citizens in the country, and unbalanced resources of remittances. These are the disadvantages that a country faces, but they don't have any choices and continue promoting migrant work as a part of policy that helps the GDP of the country. Despite various contradictions, it is clear that global migration has a lot of benefits, and some countries like Philippines is abundant on labor and rely on it to increase economic status. Countries will continue to open up global migration to avoid country or economic collapsing. Like I said earlier, global migration has advantages and disadvantages in each country. Philippines also benefits from global migration because of the remittances given by foreigners, and it doubles the money value sent to the country. It also helps the country had more project to help their economic status. Top or rich countries opens their hands to foreign laborers or global migration because they are dependent to it, that made the foreign works for them and increase the economic status, give a lot of more benefits, and increase its labor. US and UK or Donald Trump and the minister had a problem of global migration because of the overpopulated foreign migration. They wanted or they want to promote limited global migration in their countries because of the overpopulated, and also they sees that it may be covered or the culture that they had, or may forgotten their culture if the global migration will continue. But aside from that, I think global migration really helps because it has lots of benefits, no matter how much disadvantages that it has, but it really helps the country to move forward, be more economically status, and be more competent to each other. That's why global migration really helps and needs to each country. That's why top countries receive 40 to 80% of their labor forces to the foreign laborers because they accept those, and globalization made them realize that it really helps the economic status. I hope you learn from my discussion. That's all. Thank you.